This is Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich with the Sheriff's Report. Right now, we're a couple of weeks away from the August primary elections. We have a lot of different offices up for election. The office of sheriff is up for election. And last week I invited all three sheriff's candidates to come on the show, talk about their platforms, what they've been saying out on the trail, and their time at the sheriff's office. Only one of those candidates took me up on the offer. The other two said, can't come because it'll be a biased interview. The harsh reality is, folks, that's what a sheriff has to do. Sheriff has to go and face biased interviews, hostile panels, and you just can't say, I'm not coming. Over the years, I've done many of those type of panels. I've done many town hall meetings. I've come to you in multiple different forums. We have YouTube pages. We have Facebook pages. We talk about issues. And Wade Nelson and Mike Zollars want to tell you that the sheriff's office is not transparent. We entered this historic agreement with the NAACP, and one of the very first things that we did, they said, we want to know all your data concerning disparity. Now, rather than having them email back and forth to the individual that's in charge of that area of the sheriff's office, I said, we're going to do this differently. I want you to come in with the professor that you want to review this data. I want you to sit down, both of you, at the computer with our lead individual on this topic, and I want you to give us detail, exactly what you're looking for. We actually had to write some code to get some of the detail they were looking for. And these two individuals want to say lack of transparency. Well, let's talk lack of transparency, and maybe let's talk about lack of honesty in what is going on in this sheriff's race. Because I've been pretty much disengaged, didn't want to hear it, didn't want to talk about the interviews that are going on. But then I read in the papers and I read in weeklies throughout the area some of the statements being made, and I went, one thing I will not allow is the citizens of Spokane County to be lied to. That's just not going to happen. So let's take a look at some of the candidates' statements that have been made so far. Sam, if you wouldn't mind putting up the first slide. This is Wade Nelson. Wade Nelson was a detective with our agency. He had held a couple of different roles within the agency. Wade would have you believe that morale is horrible in the agency, that there's an extreme disconnect between the command level, myself, and the troops, and it's almost cancerous, according to this article. The amazing thing is when I go out and ride with the deputies, and I do go out and ride with deputies, didn't do it much during COVID, but prior to that, we went out. I rode every New Year's Eve. I was out riding with our deputies. And one of the things that I learned was we have a pretty good morale in our agency. We have pretty good morale in our agency today. The thing about morale really is what a function of looking in the mirror. Morale is what's inside you. Wade Nelson was always kind of one of those people that badmouthed the agency, its leadership behind its back. There was a point where I was speaking to a group, Wade was there. He walked up afterward and said, Sheriff, I owe you an apology. I've been saying some bad things. I apologize. You'll never hear that from me again. Well, here we are again. Wade Nelson, it's amazing some of the comments that this guy has made. Sam, could you bring the slides back up and let's advance to the next one. One of the things that Wade says, and this is off his Facebook, and I just put this slide there so you know it's off of Facebook. Sam, go down the next one more, because this is the text of what's in that particular Facebook post. Wade Nelson would have you believe, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm leading an effort to encrypt our radio channels so you can't hear anything about it, what's going out on the street. So and it's even worse. Wade Nelson literally calls every law enforcement professional in this county, every dispatcher in this county, every Shrek's personnel in this county, liars and frauds, because he says that we are trying to do this so we can cover up anything that goes wrong. My question to Wade Nelson is, how do you now lead? How do you now lead the very people that you have called liars and frauds? Because this is the lowest type of campaigning you can get to, ladies and gentlemen, to make these type of allegations, which are baseless and very much out of line. The men and women that serve this community at all levels of public safety are some of the best there are. Now, have we had issues with some? Yes, and we have we've removed them from the profession. Here's a secret about Wade. Wade didn't like the fact that we held people accountable. Wade didn't like the fact that we terminated people. Wade Nelson was one of those that disagreed with our values and standards within the sheriff's office and thought they were too high, and that I was very much a dictator because I got rid of people that did not deserve to wear the badge. That's where Wade Nelson comes from. That's why you hear, what do you hear from him? And ladies and gentlemen, do you hear anything of substance from Wade? Only an attack on the sheriff's office, the leadership of the sheriff's office. He didn't just stop at the leadership. In that particular post, he took the stance of many anti-law enforcement activists and said that we are willing to cover up things, that we have no transparency. We're willing to cover up things. Well, you've known me for 16 years. I've been your sheriff for 16 years. You've seen me step in front of cameras and say, yes, we got this wrong. You've seen me come to town halls. You've seen me go to hostile panels. I've been all over. The reputation I have is I will show up to community events, and I will show up and I will discuss issues with anyone. That's reputation. And Wade Nelson would have you believe that the sheriff's office, its leadership, and even its employees are willing to lie and cover up the things we do wrong. I've never seen such a tactic, especially from somebody that says morale is an issue. Well, I'll tell you what, Wade, this type of leadership, you'll have a morale issue, all right, when you're calling your employees liars and frauds. Sam, next one. Again, Wade goes into the accountability, transparency, partnerships with people in Spokane. The thing that Wade seems to forget is the reputation I have is the ability to build coalitions and partnerships. And yes, I even am able to do that at times, and also call people out. I still have the ability, even though I do call people out, to build partnerships. But I think it's important that leaders, when these partnerships, let's say the legislature and their reforms, we tried since 2013 to get our legislature to help law enforcement reform itself. All 39 sheriffs in 2012, 2013, 2014, we worked on issues to say if a deputy or a police officer commits a crime on duty or lies, they should not get their jobs back if the sheriff and chief have done their jobs, proven the facts, and proven that it happened. We couldn't even get that out of committee because of our legislature. And Andy Billick, Tim Ormsby, and Marcus Riccelli, along with all but 5 of our Republican representatives in the area at the time, voted no. They said no. Only Kevin Parker, Michael Baumgardner, Senator Padden, Senator Fagan, or Representative Fagan, and Representative Kretz supported that. Wade Nelson did not support that. He actually campaigned against me because of that. Now, you want to talk transparency again? Accountability, standards, values. Go back to that slide, Sam. So you can read it yourself. An exodus from the sheriff's office. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no exodus from the sheriff's office. We have retirements, and we've had more retirements since 2021 and 2020 because of the environment that our legislators and some of our national leaders and our state leaders and even local leaders on the city of Spokane side, because of the environment they have created for your law enforcement. But we still have many men and women that are staying, and we have hired nearly 53 people in the last 14 months. So they talk about all these things, but they can't show the truth. They can't prove the fact. And we're going to get down to an extreme falsehood here very shortly concerning Mr. Nelson. Next statement. This is another thing taken off of Wade's Facebook site. And he talks about leaving the sheriff's office. Next slide. And this was in an article that was in the Current out in the Valley. And this is, again, some of the things that Wade has said. He attacks our effort to improve training in the state of Washington. Wade ignores the fact that this agency is known internationally for its training, that we certify our training at the national and international level, that we've received many awards for our training, and our concept, which was backed by CJTC until Sue Rohr, the former director, backdoored us on that effort. This was a viable aspect. It was supported by our electeds in this region because this is a better way to train. And this isn't dead yet, folks. This is getting ready to come back because I was contacted by a senator in reference to regional law enforcement academies. And hopefully next week I will be able to announce that senator's name, and I will be able to announce that effort in totality. Right now it's in its infancy. So when we take a look at some of the statements that Wade makes, it just doesn't hold water if you actually know what's going on. Sam, next slide. Now, Wade Nelson says that, we've been undervaluing, mistreating people in the administration, and most have said that they would have stayed. Have watched a lot of good guys leave early. And then he goes on to say that no one talked to him when he left the agency. Well, here's the truth, ladies and gentlemen. Here's the harsh truth. Both his supervisors talked to him about that. Both his supervisors tried to talk him out of that. His supervisors actually found a way to give Wade time off to learn a new skill. He wanted to be a building instructor or inspector. That's why he left the sheriff's office. They gave him time off to learn that skill. So when he left, he would be able to get a job What did that cause for the sheriff's office? It caused many of his peers to get a heavier caseload while Wade's out there preparing for his next career on our time. True, it was done on vacation, but we had to shuffle work so he could accomplish this. We did that for him so we could take care of him. And then they told him, hey, why don't you go to the sheriff and ask for a leave of absence in case this doesn't work out, because you're close to retirement. You'll take a major hit in your retirement if you do this. Wade came and talked to me. I cautioned him about the retirement aspects, the penalties that he's going to face in the retirement aspect, because those are important when you retire. And I gave him a leave of absence. Does that sound like an administration that mistreats people? Why aren't you telling people the truth? Why don't you tell people the truth? That's what happened, ladies and gentlemen. And I can tell you, his former supervisors are really kind of down on, wait a minute, we did everything we could for the guy. We actually helped him prepare to leave this agency. We actually gave him time off to go learn a new trade. How can you do that? There's a character issue here, folks. Next. I know of no deputies that have talked to Wade Nelson about running, other than perhaps Craig Chamberlain, and that was the first person that Craig went to, or Wade went to, when he announced him and Chamberlain in a photograph, and we all know that story. So I'm not sure where Wade wants to come from. It's easy to run a campaign, ladies and gentlemen, based on throwing rocks at other people. If that's all you have, why run? Unless you just want the attention to throw rocks at other people. Next slide. Wade likes to make a lot of references to manpower. Here's the reality. Yes, we have a 0.7 per thousand officer per thousand ratio in the sheriff's office. If you really dive into that, you'll find that it's not the lowest in the state, unless we've actually dipped below Thurston County, who was 0.7. What Wade fails to tell you is that the entire state of Washington is below those national standard averages. Washington actually is 51st in the nation for law enforcement per thousand population. 51st. That means all 50 states and the District of Columbia. We are 51st. We, as a sheriff's offices throughout the state tend to be lower staffed than cities. Average in the cities is 1.5 per thousand. Averages in the sheriff's office is right around 0.7-ish across the board. Why not be honest with people, Wade? Why don't you give them the full, transparent look at what is actually going on? The Sheriffs and Chiefs Association of the state of Washington has worked for years to get our manpower statewide up. To get us even halfway up that list is billions and billions of dollars. Wade would have you believe that he can magically make all this happen. He'll go to the county commissioners, and if they don't do, he'll come straight to you and he'll bring this problem to you. As if that hasn't been done. Remember those town halls? Remember all those panels, the YouTube videos, the sheriff's reports? You know the status of our manpower. You have heard me talk about this. And last year, the Board of County Commissioner gave the Sheriff's Office 26 positions. They gave us 6 that had been cut in 20. On top of that, they gave us 21 more. We have a strategic plan that we have implemented, and we are going to the Board of County Commissioners again with phase 2 of that plan, and the next year will be phase 3 of that plan, and we are building the manpower ratios up. Wade would say, too little, too late. No, it's never too little, and it's never too late, and I'd love to see Wade face the economic pressures of the Great Recession. We didn't lose deputies in the Great Recession, folks. We didn't lay anybody off. We did lose positions, but we never lost a hard body due to layoff. We are starting to work back into regaining those positions, and all things being cyclical, next year the next sheriff will face a budget crisis, because all indicators are we will be in another recession. You need to think about that when you are electing these people. Who is best qualified? Wade does not have an education. Wade never led anything in the sheriff's office, and despite his best efforts to build his resume, I was there, folks. I was there and had to go personally fix the disaster he created in our search and rescue program. I had to do that personally. I know Wade. I've seen him operate. Next slide. Mike Zollars. Mike Zollars was a lieutenant in the sheriff's office. I considered Mike a friend. Throughout his career, I've done my best to help Mike out. When he was on the SWAT team, he couldn't maintain physical fitness standards. I spent countless lunch hours, countless evenings, if we didn't get it done at a lunch hour, working out with Mike, running with Mike, making it and helping him meet those standards. And he did meet those standards. When I was a detective and he was a detective, I was literally assigned to Mike Zollars. What do I mean by that? My assignment was to make sure that Mike was getting his cases done, because Mike, and he self-admits this in his campaign, doesn't get things done. When we promoted Mike to sergeant, I asked Mike, okay, what have you done to correct this? And he said he had been working on it. His reviews look good. I promoted him to sergeant. And he likes to make a lot of reference to the radio communication system that was built, that he was on a work team. Yes, he was on a law enforcement work team. Yes, I did ask him to head that. I was trying to develop him. The thing Mike doesn't talk about is the number of times I had to come to him and go, Mike, when is this going to get done? When is this going to get done? When Mike was getting ready to be promoted to lieutenant, I pulled him in personally and went, Mike, tell me, convince me, what has changed? What has changed? You're still not getting things done. What's changed? Why should I promote you to lieutenant? He said that he had been working on it. His direct supervisors said, I think we should give him a chance. I do have a fault, folks. Sometimes I will stay with a horse too long. Meaning, sometimes I will stay with somebody too long that shouldn't be promoted or should be removed from a position, because I truly want them to succeed. We promoted Mike to lieutenant. He was the head of the SWAT team. By the time that was done, the team wanted him gone. The team was almost in full rebellion because Mike was, again, not getting things done. Had Mike not retired, Mike would have been removed from certain things even further than he was. That's the experience. I tell you this simply because that is the reality. These are the things that the media are not asking the questions. They're not asking about, well, what was he really like? Well, I was his friend, I was his peer, I worked with him, and I mistakenly promoted him to lieutenant. That was a mistake on my part. Why? Because I still believed that there was something in him that we could we could build. By halfway through that experience, I knew that there was no fixing those issues. Next slide. Mike's another one that wants to bring up the radio communication system and encrypting the system. Mike would have you believe that he was the Don Quixote of this issue and had been fighting for years to prevent this from happening. Folks, that's not the case. Next slide. Mike actually says that he said that that he told everybody that would listen. You can see it up there. I believe encrypting the main agency channel is a bad public policy. I don't remember Mike saying that because that was never an issue. That truly was not an issue in the early years. Later on, in the last 3 years, SPD has made requests to do that. We have had discussions, but it wasn't Mike running around telling everybody. It was the administration. Now, Mike was part of the administration. He doesn't like to admit that, but he was part of the administration. And the administration had been pushing back. What's the big hoopla about this? Why does he say in here, which is a very blatant lie, he says that John Knowles, and both he and Wade blame John Knowles for this, that only one candidate, John Knowles, is in favor of encrypting. He is essentially running the sheriff's office right now, as Knezovich is largely absent. I'd like to know where that comes from. Well, true, I did go to Scotland for counterterrorism training, but I don't consider that being largely absent. I did go to a graduation for my nephew in New York, not largely absent. I will go to my son's wedding in August. But folks, I'm still here. You see me on camera. You see me fighting to stop this violent crime issue that we have. But he wants to paint a picture. He wants to blame John for this issue. Here's the harsh reality. We have pushed back on this up until roughly last May, when I went to one of my undersheriffs and went, I'm hearing that suspects have the capability on their cell phones to listen to our radio traffic. That's true. I said, I want to know if this is a true issue for the men and women out on the street. Is this causing them issues? He asked. The information he brought back was, yes, they're literally walking up to traffic stops, listening to radio traffic, listening to their radio traffic. Ladies and gentlemen, we just had a city police officer shot. That was an ambush. Had these suspects had this type of technology, they would have known every one of our movements. I'm not sure if they did or didn't. I don't know that depth of detail. But if they did, they would know every movement we made. This is the reason I have gone, perhaps it is time to talk about what does this entail? What does encrypting entail, and how do we do this? It's not really encrypting, it's delaying the transmission. This isn't a way to do away with your ability to do anything or listen to anything. It's simply an ability to delay a transmission for 5 to 15 minutes so the bad guy doesn't hear what we're doing as we're coming up. I think that's a reasonable thing to look at, don't you? Officer safety, the safety of our officers, because actually it's your safety, because we may be responding to your house. And do you really want the bad guys to know when we're getting there? Or if it's a hostage type situation, do you want them to know anything? Yes, we have the ability to switch channels. Yes, we have all these things. But in the heat of the moment, before it all calms down and we can actually do all that, do you really want to risk the safety of our officers and potentially you? Because we didn't want to delay a radio transmission for 5 to 15 minutes. That's it. Nothing gets cut, nothing gets thrown away, nothing gets hidden. But that's what we're talking about. It's talking about right now. And again, the sheriff's office pushed back on that until last May. In May, we went, is this an issue? We have found it to be an issue. We're trying to find the best solution. Why are both of these candidates beating this up? Well, because Spokane News, Jeremy Standow, is very concerned that if we delay our radio traffic at all, his business model will fall apart. That's the harsh reality. We've had discussions. Jeremy and I have had discussions. So he's trying to find a candidate that will help preserve his business model. Well, I'm more interested in protecting you and our deputies and finding a compromise to help everybody understand what's going on, and everybody will get all the information. It just might be a little delayed. And again, we haven't made any decisions on this. It's all talk. How can they be saying the things that they're saying? How can they be blaming John for this when John hasn't been involved? This is a falsehood. They need to be held accountable. The sad thing is, ladies and gentlemen, in about 2000, I think it was 8 or 9, our Supreme Court said lying is protected speech. Specifically, the case was about lying during a campaign. This is the danger of lies being protected speech. They can lie now. They can lie directly to you, and they are doing it. Next slide. This is out of the current of July in reference to statements that Mike Zollars stated. And, again, we need to look at increasing deputy staffing. Yes, we do. We will continue to do that. But these two candidates also would have you believe that we cut staffing at the patrol level. I can tell you that patrol level staffing has never been cut. Even through the Great Recession, the one unit and the only unit that was never cut was patrol. I cut my command staff. I cut lieutenants. I couldn't cut sergeants because we don't have enough of them. We cut investigations, but we never cut patrol. Why? The most important thing we do is have green and white cars responding to your emergency. This is another falsehood that they are perpetrating. Patrol's numbers have always been protected. And in this last budget increase, we received 19 more patrol deputies. That's the reality. Harsh reality for these candidates, harsh reality for them to understand, and I would hope that they would start telling the truth. Next slide. And these are some of the things that they said during the Spokane News debate that Mr. Standell put on. Wade says that I have been a trainer and leader in every unit and department that he went to. Not true. He was never led in patrol. He never led investigations. I created the county comprehensive evacuation plan. Well, if you mean you typed it up, that would be an accurate statement, because the creation of that involved fire chiefs, myself, city police chiefs, all worked on that, all approved it. Yes, that he was assigned to that unit, and yes, he did type it up, but creating it, that came from fire chiefs mainly with law enforcement input. So not quite the way he wants to portray it. The next thing Wade talks about is, the leader's top job is to make sure the commissioners understand. Oh, trust me, the commissioners understand our staffing. As a matter of fact, in 2009, I got in all kinds of trouble during a budget hearing, which is public record. Cameras were there, media was there, when I said that we run an unsafe and dangerous jail because of staffing and the design of the building. You can't get much more transparent than that. You can't be more blunt than that. And in county commissioner meeting after county commissioner meeting, I have made sure the commissioners understood our lack of staffing prevents us from doing the things we need to do to keep this community safe. The reason we are so successful, the reason that we have, property crimes went down right up into 2021, from 2012 to 2021 or 2020, property crimes decreased in this county. They began to rise in our county when they started letting everybody out of jail for COVID and when they stopped holding people accountable. That's not a law enforcement issue, folks. That is a criminal justice system issue, and that is a judge issue. Next, go back to that slide, please. So those are the facts. We do go to you. We have done all this. We're not doing a good job in our Neighborhood Watch program. I'm going to be asking Venus, our director of Neighborhood Watch, why he would be saying this, and to see what she has to say, and I'll come back to you with that. Next one is referencing intelligence operations and ability to keep up with changing technology. He says we're not doing that. Well, I can tell you, folks, we are one of the leading agencies within the state of Washington, if not the nation, on this issue. We have the technology. We are using the technology. Wade Nelson has no understanding of the capabilities of the agency he wants to run. Next slide. This is Mike Zollars. Some of these things he said. He doesn't like the location of the new training center. It's actually a really good location, and it does have housing and food infrastructure. So I'm not sure what Mike really wants to make of that. More importantly, folks, we are building a $40 million training facility for this community, for the Sheriff's Office, to ensure that we maintain that leading status as law enforcement trainers within this state. The next thing, years ago, the Sheriff's Office put up billboards on STA buses to show a diverse workforce. Some of the people in those photos did not work for the Sheriff's Office. And he goes on to say this was garbage advertising. Well, Mike's right. That did happen. But you might want to talk to Sheriff Mark Stirk about that. It happened in his administration nearly 20 years ago. Mike would have you believe that that was us. No. That was Mark Stirk. That was 20 years ago, and no one in this agency thought that was a good thing to do. Amazing how Mike wants to twist that into our administration. Not truthful, Mike. Mark Stirk, that's when it happened. You know it. You were there. Why didn't you do something then? We were all there. I spoke out. I went, this isn't good. Next statement, we have people that wash out in our hiring process and the city hires them. Absolutely right. Because we have higher standards. Mike, we hold people to high standards. We hire good people based on high standards. We don't hire people that other agencies will hire because of our standards and the process that we hold. So, Mike, are you suggesting we should lower our standards to meet your requirement? Is that what you are suggesting? Because that's what it looks like you're suggesting. Do you want us to lower our standards? Dave Ellis was law enforcement commander at Freeman during that event. He was the incident commander. Mike, you were one of the people there, but Dave Ellis was actually in charge of that event. And quite frankly, Mike, if you really want me to talk about your performance there, that's for another day. We talked about the build out of the $80 million radio communication system. Again, Mike was part of a very small group. Don't try to make it sound like you were a major leader in that, because if you are, you're disrespecting all the people that actually did that. And when he was on the SWAT team as the commander, he had a theme of leadership planning. Mike, that leadership plan existed for 20 years. I know. I was part of that leadership plan that actually developed that. And if you were that effective, why is it that the SWAT team went into rebellion during your leadership? Because you could never get anything done. Little things that you might want to mention, Mike, when you bring things up. Next slide. Mike Zollars would do away with our helicopters, folks. It's amazing because when he was SWAT team's commander, he wanted a sniper platform on the helicopters. He wanted medics on the helicopters. He supported the helicopters then. And here's the reality. $230,000 is what that operating budget is. About another $150 in overtime to have personnel. But the thing is that $230,000, look at all the people who actually pay into that. SPD pays $30,000, Kootenai County $10,000, $50,000 from Border Patrol grants. The city of Spokane Valley pays the remainder 50%. As far as personnel, SPD, Spokane Fire, Liberty Lake, and Kootenai County all contribute personnel to it. Our pilots are all volunteer. The air unit has saved many, many lives. And the air unit has caught many criminals, to include the individuals that shot the SPD officer just recently. And given the fact that we no longer have pursuit abilities in this state, except for some extreme cases, you want to get rid of the one thing that can track the movements of suspects that we can no longer pursue. Mike, I don't understand that. I don't understand why you would want to do that. Next slide. Here's a challenge for Mike. Find a more efficient operating model in the country, because people actually model off of us. Under Chief Dave Ellis, Chief Dave Ellis from Spokane Valley, is actually the vice president of the National Air Association. Another challenge for Mike Zollars. Maybe it's a challenge for the reporters that should be asking these questions. Maybe they should ask Mr. Zollars about his budgeting skills. His SWAT budget was rejected 3 times because it was inaccurate. The Sheriff's Office, $57 million operation, just shy of that. Wade Nelson and Mike Zollars do not have the educational levels or experience to operate that budget. Being sheriff requires much more than campaign rhetoric, folks. And it also requires much more than a bitter grudge because you didn't like being held to standards or the values of the agency that, quite frankly, now you want to head. Rhetoric and self-serving bitterness is all either of these candidates have brought to you. You and Spokane County deserve better and should be demanding more. And quite frankly, it's time that our media does its job and asks these tough questions rather than me. Next slide. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich. You have a very important choice. The reason I came out and the reason I bulleted all these issues and the reasons I am showing such great passion about this is your safety means something to me. You have a choice. These individuals are not telling you the truth. You need to challenge that. You need to hold them accountable for that. They want to talk about transparency, honesty. First, you have to have that before you can ever talk about it. I worked with all 3 of these candidates. There's only one that meets the standards to serve you. These other 2, I'm really disappointed in them. This is Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich. This has been the Sheriff's Report. Choose wisely, folks. The safety of this community depends on it. Have a good day.